And hi, Rich. Nice to see you. So if you guys have any questions either about my background and how I got there, or if you have any questions about consulting in a grander sense, feel free to ask any of those questions. I'm going to let you just start firing them away. I know we have some people that are on the call and not on video, so if for some reason 2 people talk at once, I'll just try to have somebody say their name and a question, and we'll take them one at a time. So anybody want to start it off?
I can start.
Okay.
So
and who is this?
Start off. What was that?
Who is this?
Malcolm.
Hi, Malcolm.
Hi. So I guess to start off, I could ask what sort of setbacks are frequently occurring, or would you sort of, I guess you could say, would you expect, and how are those dealt with?
Setbacks in the role of a consultant?
Yes. So like what sort of, I don't want to say problems, but sort of just things that, you know, happen frequently enough that you can work with them and get past them, but at the same time, you know, might be a little bit difficult to work with.
I'd say the big challenge, no matter what industry you're working on, or project managing priorities, you always have as client facing, but I think often overlook that you have trying to many people at once. So you might have 3 bosses at that thing, and they may all want different things. So trying to accommodate all of their different needs while still being a scope of work, I find that to be very difficult. I find it to be also a challenge when someone is stuck in their ways and is resistant to your presence. So as a consultant, you're going into an organization to them in some capacity, whether it be but oftentimes in a collaboration role where you're working with them to come up with a different perspective, a different solution, see the problem differently. And if they are about your being there, say there was a mandate for you to come in from the most senior person or even from the federal government, that can be quite a challenge in working with people. You have to use your interpersonal skills to show them that you could be an asset to their team and that you're really there for them and further a cause. So those are 2 of what I would consider the most pressing, and almost on every project, I've experienced some degree of one or both of those challenges.
Okay, thank you.
What would you say are the most important qualities for like excelling at this job?
I think there are a few really important qualities. I think first and foremost, interpersonal skills. At the end of the day, it is a client-facing serving role. So you need to be able to manage and understand and be empathetic of different types of people. And you need to be able to work in teams of all different sizes with people from all different backgrounds and all different skill sets. So if you're not a people person, it's really hard to be a very good consultant. I think people that are okay with not knowing everything also do better at this job, because with every new project, it feels as though it's a new job. It may be something you've done something similar to in the past, but you're never going to do the same project twice. It's just not how it works. And if you're meant to be a consultant, you like that learning component and the variety, but you need to be comfortable with the fact that you're going to have to learn on your feet. So if you're somebody who really likes structure, really likes to know everything before they get into a situation, that can be really uncomfortable. I think that you also have to be a really good storyteller. A lot of what a consultant does is take a large amount of information from their team, from their clients, from everything they observe, and all the data they're able to collect, and consolidate it into something that is very slimmed down, but something that's very meaningful to the right audience. So for instance, I might have 6 months worth of information that I've collected and solutions that I've generated. But if I'm in front of the president or the executive director or chairman of the board, I need to give them all that information in 1 minute, or else it's not going to stick. So being able to tell a really concise, fluid, meaningful story is also incredibly important. Other questions?
Are there any things do you think that we should be doing right now as a high schooler to, like, say if we wanted to pursue a career in consulting? Is there anything that you recommend we start doing now?
That's a great question. In high school, I think the best thing you can do is get a variety of experience. I would say that for college as well. A lot of people think that they need to have had a consulting internship or job before actually going into a long-term consulting career. And I very much agree with that. I think part of what makes a good consultant is the variety of experiences that they can pull from. So the more industries you can touch, the more business cases you can read, the more insights you can gather from a variety of people, the better. There's no one size fits all. I would definitely study business cases that are interesting to you. So if there's a company like, say, Google is somebody that's fascinating to you, or say you have a particular automobile like Tesla is very interesting to you, study the businesses, understand what challenges they face, what problems they're solving for, and get a sense of some of the things that you might be working on. Another really important characteristic of a consultant or a successful consultant, I would say, is their ability to problem solve. So I find that the people who are innately meant to be consultants are the people who are the same people who would get excited about solving a Sudoku problem. If they're the people who get really jazzed that they got that puzzle solved and they did it in 2 minutes and it was faster than their last time, those people are people that tend to be pretty good consultants, because you're always improving upon yourself and you're always trying to get to a solution. Now that's a pretty straightforward solution, but sometimes they're more creative solutions. But they're people who really get excited by the prospect of problem solving.
On a typical day, do you spend most of your time like working with a team or people, or working on a computer?
Good question. I used to work a lot more in front of a computer. Now I spend a lot more time with teams. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is I'm more senior now. So I think in the more junior stages of your career, a lot of the add value that you have is creating content, creating decks, working on Excel files, doing things that support and inform the conversations that your more senior teammates will be having with the client. I think there's also a bit of fear, to be honest with you, in the more senior levels about a junior person's ability to be very strong with a client. Some of your clients might be 50, 60 years old, and they've been doing this work for years and years and years. So a lot of times, the more senior people will be the ones to interface. Now I work in nonprofit consulting, and the engagements are smaller, which means I'm almost 100% interfacing with clients. I spend probably 20% of my time making material and the other 80% of my time sitting and talking to people and having conversations with different groups of people. So it does depend on your level, and it does depend on the size of the project you're working on.
So when you're working with different clients, like what's the process for like making like good decisions for them?
Yeah, so it depends on the problem. A big firm, so at Ernst and Young, which is a big firm, they have multi-million-dollar contracts, and they bring teams of anywhere from 5 to 50 people to a problem, right? So those are really big scale problems. Those people, or the firm, so Ernst and Young in that case, have already been contacted by the client because they know they have a problem. They say, I've identified that our, strategy is off. We need help in this area. And then Ernst and Young and all the other consultancies will submit back a high-level idea of how that work would go. So they've already scoped out, we think that your issue is X, and we think that we can solve it by doing X, Y, Z in this many months or this many years using this many people, and these are the things that we're going to promise we can do. So it's really up to the more senior people of those big firms how they approach a problem and how they think the best approach will actually play out. In smaller engagements, more boutique consultancies, or certain sectors like nonprofit, you have to scope everything yourself. So a lot of your time and energy up front should go into understanding the problem. I would say right now, if a client calls me and says, this is my problem, 50% of the time, that's not really their problem. They don't see the full picture. And part of my job as a consultant is to ask the right questions to get them to the heart of their real problem. And then I collaborate with them based on whatever their working environment is. If they don't have a lot of time to spend to sit with me, I have to structure my meetings based on when they're available. Or if they want to be really engaged and co-collaborate at every stage, I can have a lot of focus groups. So you deliver a solution that, one, addresses the real problem, and two, is structured in a way that they can actually co-collaborate with you. And again, I've designed every single project I've worked on. I have had some authority over the design, and it's always been a customized design.
So who does a consultant look to for advice?
Other consultants. And the consultants, certainly. I mean, in the first couple of years, people always ask, how can a 22 or 23-year-old be a consultant? That's a really good question. And if you see consulting as an expert advisor, then that's not what you are in the first couple of years. You are there to bring a different perspective, to collaborate, to be a team member. But I think that you look to the more senior team members. So for instance, when I first started, I worked on teams of 15, 20 people. Some people have been there for 20 years already, and they have seen hundreds of projects already, so they could pull from their really deep knowledge. There's also a lot of learning that has to happen on the fly. So if I didn't know something on my first project, the second I got home, it was on me to do the research and to learn on the spot so I could keep up with the pace of the work. So there's a lot of proactive self-learning that has to happen, because for a really long time, you're going to be a generalist. You're going to know a lot of things, but you're not going to know them very deep. You're going to know this much about a lot of stuff. So it's your job to get the proper amount of knowledge. And I also think that people share on social media and their different consultant forums, where people actually share with one another how they've approached solutions and how better to approach solutions. And I think those networking, collaborative environments are really helpful, because nothing is unsolvable. And most problems in the entire world, including the really big ones, have been solved in some way before. It's just about tapping into that knowledge.
Okay.
Any other questions, guys? And you can ask anything about background, about what it means in your first couple of years, anything you might have a question around consulting.
I'm wondering why. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Rich. I haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get my headphones to work.
No problem.
So for me, like I'm more interested in sort of like a sports track based off of like any sort of job I go into, whether it be sports management, business administration, stuff like that. I sort of want to have like a sports asterisk to it. So I have like a few resources that I know who are involved in sports consulting. It's more of like sports insurance or like sports management consulting, stuff like that, like how to get the business of what sounds sports. I was wondering if you have like any knowledge of like sort of people who do that based in whether it be professional or collegiate sports?
Yeah, so I have a couple of friends that have worked for ESPN in a consultant role, and I think they have different roles across that organization and across various teams. You can add the word consultant to any other subsector, right? You can be a consultant on anything. The difference is, yes, sometimes it's a bit tangential to what you might be interested in. So if you're really interested in the sports, is providing insurance consulting interesting to you? Or is providing organizational consulting around the team dynamic from a corporate perspective interesting to you?
Right.
So I think anything that you can think of, there is a consultant role. The thing that you're talking about, so sports in particular, but a couple other industries that are very desired and hard to get into, it can take years to get to an independent consultant role because those industries expect sports expertise.
Right.
Or, sometimes in automobile consulting, they expect that kind of consulting as a background or having, worked on the ground with a team. So not impossible, but you might want to start in a consultant role that is kind of peripheral on the side of what you're really, really interested to do, as long as it's in that same subsector, and move your way into a role that's kind of more primary to what you're interested in.
All right.
Okay, so when and why did you determine that, when you wanted to become a consultant?
Why did I determine that? I actually did not have a very traditional track to consulting. I started college with a dual major in business because I thought it was smart to just have a business background because everything is at its core business, even if it's writing a book. And then I also was doing pre-med because I didn't want to shut any doors, which is not always a good way to go because eventually you have to start making some decisions for yourself. So I'd done a lot of different traveling, a lot of different internships, and by the time I hit senior year, I thought about all the different tracks I could take. Consulting gave me the most flexibility, quite honestly. It kept the most number of doors open to me because I could be a consultant at one firm, so for instance, Ernst and Young in this case, and I could be a consultant across different industries. So I ended up narrowing in on financial services, but I could have done consulting across manufacturing or entertainment. So it gives you exposure to a lot of different sub-industries, and it gives you a lot of variety. And I thought that that's what was best for me since I wasn't sure I was willing to commit to an industry yet. So consulting kind of gave me an out, if you will, to still explore my options and have variety in my everyday work. And since that point, I've never looked back, and it continues to keep doors wide open for me. And I think that having a couple years as your starting point in consulting, you will, without fail, always have job opportunities.
Okay.
Other questions, guys?
So what's the biggest challenge or obstacle you're facing right now, and how do you plan to overcome it?
That I'm facing right now?
Yeah.
Getting my work funded. Very different in nonprofit than for-profit, but consultants are very expensive. You always hear jokes about lawyers, but consultants also come with a price tag. So in the for-profit context, it can be very challenging, especially outside of banking. Banking and financial services in general tends to be a fairly rich industry, so they tend to have money to invest in themselves and in consultants, whereas some other industries just don't have the luxury of investing in outside help. And in my industry in particular, it's the decision between hiring me and sometimes hiring a full-time person. So, me for a couple months to work through a strategic plan with them, or, a part-time after-school provider. So it's a really big trade-off, and trying to be creative about how to get the work funded and deliver the most bang for my buck. Any other questions? Even if they seem stupid, please ask them, because this is a good forum for you to get out all of those questions you might have about what it means to go into consulting. I think it's a very broad umbrella term that's often misused and even more often misunderstood. So any questions you have.
So do you do a lot of like traveling? Because I know I was talking to a guy, he worked for Citibank, and he said he went to Japan for like 3 years just to work. And I wasn't sure if that was part of what Citibank sent him to do, or if that was just he could do it because he was a consultant and could work from Japan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Travel is, depending on who you ask, the best thing or the worst thing about the job. Really depends on your stage in life. So, maybe 22, right out of college, nothing to lose, no strings attached. It's really exciting to travel all of the time. And then maybe for somebody who's married with 3 kids, they don't maybe want to be on the road all the time. So what I was told when I first joined consulting is that expect to travel 50% of the time. And what that means is you're either going to be traveling none, or you're going to be traveling 100% of the time. And over your career, it will average out to about 50%. So for the first 3.5 years of my career, I traveled every single week. Now, I will caveat that statement with, it's not always glamorous jetting off to Japan travel. I have gone to places like London. I've worked in a lot of the financial hubs. So it's all, you're going to be with your clients, right? And work at the client site with them. But I also got stuck in Delaware for a year in the middle of nowhere. So it's a catch-22. You do get to move around. You get to see a lot of different places. You get to be with the client, which is invaluable. No amount of phone calls or web calls or anything can make up for being with a person and producing together. But it wears you down, especially if you're doing Monday through Friday travel versus Monday through Thursday travel. You'll hear that difference a lot. So a consultant might say that they got on a Monday through Friday gig, and that's just terrible in a consultant's world, because you're flying out at 6 a.m. on Monday and you're flying back and getting home at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. on Friday, which is very different than if you fly back on Thursday and get to work from home on Friday. So definitely project dependent. Huge consideration. If you don't travel well, be ready to have a problem in the consulting world, because it will be expected of you. And unfortunately, for the first couple of years, unless you're in a very, very accommodating firm, and I don't know many of those in the consulting sphere, you'll be asked to travel based on the needs of the client, not on your needs. So something to be cognizant of.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in particular that you like best about your current job?
That I like about it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I like everything about it. I love my job. Seriously, I think it's a great job. I have, the flexibility that they expect from you. So, in for-profit consulting, I found much worse, but I still have this problem, is the flexibility they expect around your work-life balance. You may have some sort of balance, but you're still expected to answer emails at all times of the day, and you're expected to be available for your more senior members and your clients. But it's really wonderful for me now, because it gives me the flexibility. If I have a client meeting at 4 p.m., I by my house. Rather than go back to the office, I work from home the rest of the day. Or, if I need to meet somebody another city or on the other side of the city, I get to do that. I get to see a lot of my city. I think that I agree and enjoy the content. I love being able to problem solve. I have to learn every single day new content. And I love that. I oftentimes don't know the answer, and that's what excites me too, because if I knew the answer every single time, I would be very bored. And I don't have to sit in front of a desk all day. I think that's really important. A lot of my clients, I've noticed, I've had a greater appreciation for my career after experiencing some of my clients, especially at banks. There were some people that every day for their entire career did the exact same thing. Exact. So whether it was checking a certain report or entering certain data, they did the same thing for 10, 15 years. And I am very grateful that I do not have to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else more personal to where you guys are, what you need to do now, what subsector you might be interested in?
Would you have a recommendation in terms of location for best internships? Like I think I'm probably the oldest one here. I don't know who else is on the call, but I'm going to be a senior next year. So after next year, I'll be pretty much deciding where I'm going to go. And I'm just wondering if there's any sort of better hubs based on my interest in terms of consulting internships.
Yeah, so I would certainly consider a subsector that you're interested in and look there first. So for sports, of course, you're going to have certain hubs based on the teams that you're interested in potentially working with.
Right.
Financial services, for instance, you want to be in a financial services hub. The bigger the city, the better. There's more work in bigger cities. So New York, Chicago, Boston, they have a lot more consulting work than even some of the bigger West Coast cities, and of course in the Midwest. So make sure that you have that opportunity. And I think it's really important to be in as big of a city as you can stand. And I say that not because I don't love New York, but I know a lot of people who moved here that were eaten alive by it and eaten alive by the opportunities that a consulting career in New York can provide. So make sure you're in a place you actually enjoy living as well. But I think the bigger the city, the more the opportunities. I think the bigger the city and the more international the city, so a Chicago and a New York come to mind very quickly, the more opportunity for international work and international transfer, if that's something that's on your radar.
Yeah, okay.
And if you work for a really big firm, that's another consideration you guys will all have to consider if you decide to truly go with consulting is, are you going to go to a firm that's very large, or are you going to go to a firm that's small? Benefits of small, you will get more responsibility earlier. You'll probably learn more about comprehensive business. So you won't just work on one tiny segment of a project, you'll be responsible for more of it. So it'll teach you more quicker. A bigger firm, you have more resources behind you. So you have more people to ask for help, more trainings. You have the ability to go back to school a lot of times if getting your graduate degree on a company is something that's important to you, which for how much graduate degrees are now, and you're really interested in it, it should be important to you if you're thinking about that down the road. And also your ability to transfer. So a Big Four or a McKinsey or a Bain or a BCG, they are literally all over the world. So it has kept a lot of my life options open being a consultant because I could choose a place and network within the same company and not have to leave the company to experience another part of the world. So those are some of kind of the cost benefit analysis of what it's like to work for a big firm or a small firm.
Right. I was talking to, I think it was a career day. I was talking to 3 people who were in consulting, but they were also heavily involved in finance.
Yeah.
So it sort of seemed like the end goal for those 3 being finance consultants was to open their own firm. Like, is that like a goal for you too? Like, I know you're obviously much younger than them because they were quite old, but is that like the end goal for most all consultants really, is to have their own firm?
I think that is the spoken goal of a lot of consultants. I will tell you, I don't think that's a realistic goal for a lot of people. And the reason I say that is because I've seen people who have worked in a company for 25 years as a consultant. So worked at even a McKinsey or a Bain for 25 years, really successful in that structure. That is not the same as starting your own business. And the reputation of the firm is what's bringing in the work, not necessarily your reputation, no matter how good you are. If you're a senior partner at McKinsey, that's wonderful, but you're coming with the McKinsey brand. Once you spin off and you become John Doe Consultancy, your clients most of the time are staying with McKinsey. So I think it's a really nice goal to have. You know, in 20 years, would I love the flexibility of having my own firm? Yes. If I had a preloaded client list, no, because it would be like starting from scratch. That is a startup all over again, no matter how long you've had a reputation in the industry. So yes, I hear a lot of people say it. No, I don't think it's feasible for everybody. And no, I don't think it's what a lot of people think it's cut out to be. I think it's way more work than working for a company. I think the ideal goal for a lot of people is to be a partner at a consultancy, because once you get to that level, you have so much flexibility. You make a very good living. You have a lot of say in where you live, what you do, and a lot of your job, quite frankly, is managing people and networking. You get to spend a lot of time just networking with people, which is not a bad gig. So yeah, I think it is a common goal. I just don't think it's necessarily always realistic.
All right, sounds good.
Any other questions, guys? Any other areas we haven't touched on that are kind of plaguing you as you think through if you really want to go this route or if you want to go an alternative?
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's always sort of been people telling me that I'd be either really good at sales or really good at something in business management. And then my dad always tells me no one goes to college for sales. So I don't know. I guess consulting sort of that in between of business and sales, where you're sort of selling expertise. So
consulting is sales. You're just selling yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's definitely a point of interest. It's just a matter of how I can shape my sort of interests and put it into the consulting world.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good piece of advice for everybody to consider. Going down the road of consultant for consulting's sake is often not enough for people. So it doesn't really hit on what they want. So I just went into consulting to try it out, to see what it was like. Got a couple years under my belt and came away from that couple of years with some key findings about myself. What do I like? What do I not like? What's a non-negotiable for me in my career? What's a nice to have in my career? And where am I going to find that? And I had a better sense of what content I wanted to be consulting on. So I really loved social sector work. So I wanted to move into that space. But I think if you don't know what you want to do, just starting and trying it out and learning about yourself and getting a baseline is a really good way to go. But if you know more about yourself and you know, sports are of interest to me, or, I really like the media and entertainment side of the house. Think about how you can combine that interest with consulting. So I had a girl once that I spoke to, a student who, in her conversation with me, so clearly was devoted to the concept of the arts, so performing arts. And she was, I mean, everything she talked about, she had been told that she was supposed to be a consultant or a lawyer by her parents, but everything that came out of her was going in a different direction. And we talked a lot about the fact that there is an opportunity to combine those, to bring her passion, her experience for dance, for performing arts, and to be a consultant, even at a really big firm. We provide consultant services to media, to art outlets, everything. You can find those opportunities. It's just about really being proactive and seeking them out. Even amongst the big four or the boutique consultancies, every consultancy tends to have a specialty. So there are some, like for the big four, for instance, PwC is really well known within the industry for having very good hospitality consulting. So anybody who wants to do consulting around resorts, hotels, transportation, that's a place for them to go, right? Whereas EY has a stronger financial services. So understanding what your subsector might be, you can actually start narrowing in on a particular organization that might be stronger at that, or provide more opportunities in that space. Across education as well, McKinsey is very famous for their government work and for their education work. So if that's something of interest to you. So don't just think, I want to be a consultant. Think about what kind of consultant you want to be and what sectors you may be interested in exploring. Anything else from anybody that's just on the phone? Sid or Malcolm?
No, I think that's pretty much it for me, for Malcolm.
Okay.
Yeah, same for me.
Three of you that are on video, anything else that you had?
I mean, it sounds like we're wrapping up, but if we are, do you mind
No,
if I get your email
we have
or something?
more than enough time. We have 15 minutes if you guys have questions. I'm not going to hold you without questions, but if you do have something, this is kind of your time to do a brain dump.
I'm just thinking, but
Yeah, not really.
Okay. Okay. Well, if that's the case, I don't want to hold you guys. I know that it might just be on the spot. Thinking about questions can be difficult, and it might be something that dawns on you later. Feel free to reach out to me via email at any point. My email is EA as in Apple, Adams 527@gmail.com. Again, that's EAADAMS 527@gmail.com. That's my personal account. If you guys need anything, come across any questions, either about what experiences you think you need to get, about challenges of the industry, concerns you have about your fit, or concerns you have about even alternative paths. I considered a lot of different paths when I started thinking about what opportunities I want to explore, and I fleshed a lot of those out, from law to pre-med to consulting, across different subsectors. So feel free to reach out with any of those questions. That's what I'm here for. And otherwise, have a wonderful afternoon or evening, depending on where you are.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.